Diablo 4's new season, Death Awakening, dropped recently, and the void-like portal effects are genuinely pretty nice. The swirling nether tears, the ground glow, and the embers looks pretty cool. So I thought I would make a tutorial on it on how to make a similar looking portal effect to it. All you need are 2 shaders, a few meshes, and a bunch of textures. I have used both Substance Designer and Photoshop for it, but you can use whatever you have. Some of those textures are optional, and you can get by with way less than that. So let's begin. So here we have the full effect. Let's try and break this down bit by bit. I'm just gonna disable all of those, and we can start with the Portal 1. And let's zoom in here. So we have the duration of 1 and lifetime of 10 for basically all of them, with a full opacity of course, and stop action of callback and color mode automatic. For the mission, all of the main ones are using 1 because we don't need any more of those, and some slight fade in and fade out gradients. Here we have the size over lifetimes. For 2 different axes we just need some slight adjustments for the fade in and fade outs. For the mesh itself, we are using a VFX mesh Portal 1, which I'm gonna show you later how to create in Autodesk Maya. And we have the skill shader Portal 1 material. Here we can see that the main texture is this kind of a noise 5, which drives the most of the texture itself, which gives this kind of a nice flamey slash void looking effect. And for the alpha texture, we need this kind of a smoky kind of a shape, and we need kind of a trail like, so I made this kind of a texture for it. For the distortion, we are using a lighter noise because we just need some low opacity distortion, and we are multiplying it with this kind of cyany color. Then let's jump to the edge one. So here we have this kind of flowing outwards kind of effect, which can help you visually increase the fidelity a bit and make it more interesting. The base settings are the same here as well. The same goes for the size. Here we are just increasing and decreasing at the beginning and at the end the size, just to emphasize on the intro and outro. For the mesh we have this kind of a flat circle. And for the shader portal we are using the second skill shader. So here we have the main texture, which is the mask gradient. So because we only need the texture to flow on this angle. For the alpha texture, we are using a bit of a darker noise, just to emphasize it a bit more. And for the distortion, it's a lighter noise. And here we increase the texture ramp by 3.4 with an intensity, and this kind of the same cyany texture. For the second edge, this is an optional one, but it just adds this kind of a mysterious void-like effect or a swirl to it, with the same base settings, emission of 1, some slight fade in and outs, and the sizes are basically the same as well. You can see all of them here. And this one has some slight rotation over lifetime, just to make it more interesting. And for the mesh, we're using the same circle mesh 2. And for the material, we have the skill shader Portal 3. Here we also have the mask gradient as the main texture. For the secondary, it's a lighter noise, the flamey kind of a noise. For the distortion, we're using the same texture with the color. Then we have the first ground effect. I have moved it up a bit, but you can turn this into a decal as well. The base settings are the same, with one emission and some slight in and out fading. Here we don't use separate axes, but we just use one. And for the renderer, we have the mesh circle 2 again. We just need to reuse as much as possible. And for the material, we use the skill shader ground 2. The main texture is the gradient again. The secondary texture is noise 6, because we need those darker spots. Same goes for the alpha texture as well. And the distortion is a lighter noise. And here we have increased the texture ramp by 1. Then we have the second ground texture. This shows the area of effect, or like the AoE size. Hence I have made it a bit bigger and added some slight delay, but then you need to decrease the lifetime by the same amount. The emission is 1, color of lifetime is the same, size over lifetime is on the same axis, but with some slight changes at the beginning and end, so we get this kind of nice bouncy feeling to it for the intros and outros. And for the mesh, we are using a mesh funnel 1. And for the material, we use a skill shader ground 3. Here we have the second noise as the main texture. And for the alpha, we are using a mask gradient. For the distortion, we have a noise 1. And for the color, we have multiplied it by intensity of 3. Then we have the distortion. Distortion you can see working around it. So we also have some slight delay and a lifetime of 9.5. Emission of 1. Some darker color over lifetime with a longer fade in and out. Size over lifetime is a bit wobbly. Show here as well, so you can see it more clearly. And for the mesh, we are using the same funnel. And the distortion shader are some basic settings: scale of 5, a really low multiply, and rotation and speed of 1. Then we have the image. Here is the same basic settings. Same goes for emission. And size over lifetime we have on separate axes, just for a bit more customization. And the renderer is using the mesh circle 3, which is a bit more of a bowl shaped, but it comes from circle 2. It's just a separate version of it. And for the texture or the material, we have a universal render pipeline unlit shader with a transparent alpha and render both. Then we have the image in it, and for the max size it's 256 and billionaire and automatic format with normal compression, so we get this kind of low resolution feeling to it. And yeah, it has a blue tint. For the particles, we can see them here. They are this kind of a smoky particle. Here we have the duration of 9.5 and a delay of 0.5. Both particles have the same hex color. The emission is 5 and we have a shape to it. So it spawns just around the portal. We have some velocity over lifetime and limit velocity over lifetime. Then we have a color with a bit more fade in and out. We have a noise for it. And we have a renderer. Here we have the matte smoke 4. Also using the universal renderer pipeline particles unlit, but you can create your own. Here we have just a white color. And we have a text smoke 4. Here you can see the smoke texture. The smoke texture is showing the same base as the trail, so we have a similar kind of a feeling to it. And let's take a look at the last particle. So those are our tiny particles or embers. Here is the same for the duration is 9.5 and a delay of 0.5, sharing the same color hex codes. The emission is 5 and the burst of 30 if you want a bigger intro. Then we have the shape for the spawn and the velocity over lifetime with some color over lifetime tweakings, and the noise. It's not that much, it's only 0.4. Then, since it's a texture sheet, we are using a frame over time, which is 4 because it's 2x2, and the renderer, where we have the matte ember 02. So here we have the particle standard on lit, but you can use the universal renderer pipelines ones as well. Here we have the soft particles checked, and we have the texture itself. And lastly, but not least, we have the light source, which just adds some additional elements. You don't really need it, but it just adds some nice fidelity or looking to it. We have the same hex color. We have an emission of 1 and the color of lifetime. Then we have the light source by a intensity of 45, but you can tweak the settings yourself, with none as a renderer because we don't need it, and I have linked a prefab here, but you can always just create a new point light if you want, and you can drag and drop it and make a prefab out of it. And that's basically it for the hierarchy itself. Let's have a look at the skill shader. The main goal of this shader is to do a little bit of everything and have a decent amount of customization. So here we have two of the main textures that are blended together twice and then multiplied with each other, which is the main core of it. Then we also have the tiling, which do the rotation, speed and tiling, and here we also have a boolean which can be turned on and off. All of those main settings I have kept at 0, you can see, which is usually the best if you don't want to use all of those attributes. And we have also a secondary tiling, which do the same thing but for secondary texture. Then we can have a look at the time node. So we have a time float and multiply. Also we are using a separate alpha for it, so we have the rotation, tiling, texture and speed also, so we have the separate category for it. And here we have a distortion. The distortion comes before the textures and tilings themselves, so we can do those calculations beforehand. So here we have also the speed, the second speed, which is only for the distortion, the tiling, texture, and the amount, which is then multiplied by the UV and blurred by the UV split alpha. So here you can see those connections, which then turns into tiling, texture, and alpha. And then we multiply them together, and we are multiplying them with the color ramp. So here we have the texture ramp, which is a texture 2D, which we have the gradient ramp texture from Photoshop. And here we do a texture size and divide it by 2, and here is the index which feeds into the correct line of gradient from the Photoshop texture. And we also have a multiply by color, which if you want to add some additional color variation, and a vertex color if we also want to use the vertex color from the particle system. And at the end I also have a Fresnel, which I don't use that much, but it is a good additional feature to have in a shader. And here we have an on and off toggle if we even need it or not. It is usually a good custom to have if you don't use it that often. And we have a branch with a ease front face. And the graph settings are pretty simple. We just use the only transparent and alpha blending mode. The distortion shader is a way simpler one. Here we have similar settings as the main graph settings. Here we don't use a single texture, we just use the basic simple noise. and we rotated it with a float and do a scaling with a vector 2, and obviously use speed as well with a time node, which then feeds into the simple noise. And we have a color if we need. The main color is from the scene color, and we are also using a vertex color for the alpha. And you have a pretty straightforward settings. For the mesh circle 2, create a cylinder and add 8 subdivision caps. Remove the bottom part so you are left with a flat circle. Then take the middle vertices and bring them as close as possible to the middle point. Add a UV texture so that you can see where the tiling is. Go to UV editor and select the whole mesh. Go to modify unitize. Select all of the edges and unselect one of those edges, which goes from edge to the middle point. Then select cut and sew and press on move and sew. After this, go to modify layout and press on the UV shell. Stretch the UV set over the whole UV box. For the circle 3, duplicate the last circle, then press X and move the middle vertices down, so you get this kind of a bowl shape, and export as an OBJ. For the funnel one, I started with a cylinder from which I removed the top and bottom part and reduced it in height. Then I did a cut in the middle with a multi-cut tool and stressed out the middle part. Then you add 2 more cuts to the middle and smooth them out. For the UVs, you select the mesh and go with modify unitize. Then select all of the edges and leave out one edge for the cut. Then select and move and sew. Then select arrange layout and cut it in half. And move the bottom part to the upper corner and upper part outside of the first UV box. For the mesh portal 1, create the cylinder and remove the top and bottom part. Then turn it on its side and scale it down to a ring-like shape. With multicut tool, add an additional mid ring to it and pull the outer edges towards the middle. Then press B on the keyboard and start modifying the portal shape with the vertex points, until you get the result that you are happy with. Then add a UV material to check the tiling of the UVs. Then open the UV editor and click on modify unitize. Select all of the edges and unselect one of those edges to make a cut. Then select cut and sew and press move and sew. After this, go to modify layout and rotate the UVs on its side. So here we have the main Substance Designer file that I have made for all of the textures that we need so far in the tutorials. And we can jump into the first noise texture. First noise texture is a pretty straightforward one. I'm just gonna jump through all of the settings here so you can see and follow along if you want to. But obviously you can use any kind of noise textures that you want, or you can generate noise textures, or you can use your own, or maybe you already have some from your own project file. But the idea is to have this kind of a flaming noise texture as the first noise. And then we can jump to the second one. So this is a bit of a blurry version of the first noise, which is really good for those secondary noise textures that you need to be able to multiply and you use together with the main noises. So it just has a little bit of a less detail, but does its job in a lot of different areas. Then we have the noise 5. This is one of those darker noise textures, and it also has this kind of a flamey feeling to it, but you can use it in a lot of different shaders as well and materials. I try to make those as commonly used as possible, so they still have those interesting brighter areas to them with some dark spots. And we can look at the noise 6. So this is more kind of a plasma this has a kind of plasma feeling to it. So we are using more cell noise with it. This can also be used in those necrotic and watery textures, or if you need those kind of slow moving noise maps. So there is a lot of same kind of nodes that we are using throughout those texture maps. We are doing a lot of warp grayscales and blurs, which do most of the heavy lifting, and of course blending them together. And here we also have the edit node, and the gradient glow and the gradient map glow color are really good for just seeing how it will actually look like in the end. But of course we are still exporting as a black and white map. And for the noise textures, it is really important to have it tileable, so we have this kind of make it tile patch grayscale before we are actually getting to the actual output of the file itself. Then let's zoom out here, and we can see that we have a ember texture. This is a really simple one because we are just using a bell shape, and we have used a Perlin noise with some different disorder variations, and we are just doing the same multi-directional warp grayscale to all of them and transforming to different areas of the texture, then blending them together with a linear dodge add, doing some auto levels and see how they look like in the end, which is a really easy way to do some particles. Next up, we can take a look at the smoke that we have. The smoke is a bit more difficult, but once you get the hold of it, it looks pretty logical. So we start with some noise and a cross section, and we do two versions of them, and then we make a blending copy of them, which then goes through a histogram scan, and we take them in two different directions. And we do this because we want to have a bunch of different versions of the smoke itself. So you can see from the first version we have this kind of we can take it to a trail kind of smoke, which we just export, and we don't do anything more with it. But you can also make a non-uniform directional warp grayscale and then take it to a make a tile patch grayscale, which means that when you use a mask with it and blend it together, you actually get a interesting spherical kind of shape to it. And the same thing we have for this smoke as well. So we are coming from those auto levels and combining them with a Voronoi and doing a histogram scan to have those additional white levels on the brighter areas. Then make it patch again, and we are blending it with a Perlin noise. This time it's a bit of a different warp. And in the end we have this kind of a shape, which looks pretty good. Also, we have a mask gradient. This is a really simple one. We have just a shape, we just blur it, do a transform, and take it to blur and auto levels. And we already have a simple gradient mask. You can see how it looks like in the end. And yeah, we just export all of them out. Next up, we take it to Photoshop, do some slight color adjustments to make it a bit more cyan and greenish looking. Then we remove the background and crop out the house. Do some more color tweaking and just see how the light bounces a bit better, just to highlight the edges of the buildings. Then we zoom out a bit, remove the edges, and make it a PNG. And that's it. And we need one last thing, which is the texture ramp Photoshop file. What you do here is create a new file. For the width, you set 256, and for the height, it can be 30. Then you go to the rectangle shape tool. You can zoom in, and you can just fill a single height bar. With it, you go to fill, and you set your opacity. Here you can set different colors for the intro, middle part, and outro, and you can just set it here. For the current one, we need a blue tone and we need a purple tone, so I have 2 rows here. And that's it. And let's take a look how it holds up under the rendering debugger mode. You can go here and select from the overdraw, go to all. So here we have some white areas, which means there's a bit too much overdraw. That's why I made a second edge, which is good for optimization. You can get rid of those two and it looks a bit better because we don't really want that much overdraw. And here we are, the portal is ready. The goal here wasn't to perfectly recreate something from the Diablo series, even though the final result can get pretty similar, but still we want to make our own thing. And the main purpose of this tutorial was to show the workflow and techniques behind building this kind of portal VFX in Unity 6. So you can take these ideas and create your own variations of it. Hopefully this tutorial gave you some useful techniques for building a portal for your own game. I chose Maya, Photoshop and Substance Designer because they are the industry standard tools, but you can obviously use other tools as well. But you should be able to use those in some extent. Leave a suggestion in the comments what skill or ability or a environmental VFX I should do next. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.